What if I told you that the corn to phosphate price ratio just hit the highest level ever recorded in agricultural history? Now, you might be thinking, what does this have to do with my backyard garden? Well, everything, because those same price shocks hitting commercial farmers are coming for your garden center bags too. The fertilizer you've been buying for years is caught up in the same crisis that's squeezing farmers across the country. But I've got 3 simple strategies that'll protect your budget and still give you the best harvest of your life. You've probably noticed your grocery bill creeping higher and higher, especially for fresh produce, those tomatoes, that fresh corn, even the leafy greens. Everything costs more than it did just a year or 2 ago. What most folks don't realize is that there's an invisible force driving those prices up, and it's happening long before that produce even reaches the store shelf. The connection starts in the commercial farms, where your food begins its journey. Fertilizer costs are the hidden driver behind what you're paying at checkout. When farmers spend more to feed their crops, those costs get passed directly to you and me. Right now, we're watching this play out in real time across America's farmland. Here's where it gets serious. Fertilizer now represents roughly 40% of a corn farmer's operating costs. We're talking about prices like $1,000 per ton for potash and $850 per ton for anhydrous ammonia. These are the nutrients that make crops grow, and they've become almost as valuable as the crops themselves. To help you understand just how extreme this situation has become, think about it this way. A farmer now needs to sell 184 bushels of corn just to buy 1 ton of diammonium phosphate fertilizer. That's the corn to phosphate price ratio, and it's at the highest level ever recorded in agricultural history. Decades of farming data, and we've never seen numbers like this. It's like needing to sell your entire month's harvest just to buy the fertilizer for next month's planting. 3 major forces created this crisis, and they're all working against farmers at the same time. First, we still have supply chain disruptions that make it harder to move fertilizer from where it's made to where it's needed. Second, geopolitical tensions are affecting fertilizer production around the world, creating uncertainty in global markets. Third, ongoing countervailing duties on imported phosphate fertilizers are adding extra costs that somebody has to pay. Moroccan phosphate, for instance, faces these duties that drive up the price American farmers must pay. The numbers tell a harsh story. Commercial farmers are facing losses exceeding $100 per acre because of these elevated costs. They're caught in a squeeze between what it costs to grow their crops and what they can sell those crops for. Corn prices are hovering at or below $4 per bushel, while input costs keep climbing. This means many farmers will actually lose money on every acre they plant. Now, here's what connects all this to your backyard garden. Those same economic forces are pushing up prices at your local garden center too. The bag of fertilizer you bought last spring for $25 might cost $35 or $40 this year. The supply chain problems, the global tensions, the trade policies affecting big agriculture are also affecting the small packages we buy for our tomato plants and flower beds. This matters especially for those of us on fixed incomes. When you're retired and managing a careful budget, even a $10 or $15 increase in your gardening supplies adds up over the season. Multiply that across all the amendments and nutrients your garden needs, and you're looking at real money. Here's the good news. While we can't control global markets or trade policies, we can take back control of our own gardens. The big agricultural corporations want you to believe their products are the only way to grow healthy plants. They've spent decades convincing us that gardening requires constant purchases from their shelves. Here's what those big agricultural corporations don't want you to know. You don't need their expensive products to grow a thriving garden. In fact, you're already sitting on a gold mine of nutrients that most people throw away without a second thought. Every single day, you're throwing away something more valuable than the most expensive fertilizer at the garden center. Those coffee grounds you toss in the trash, those vegetable peels, those banana skins, and eggshells, they're all packed with the exact nutrients your plants are begging for. Here's what the fertilizer companies hope you never figure out. Kitchen scraps contain all the same nutrients as commercial fertilizers, just in a form nature intended. We're talking about nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the same NPK ratio printed on those expensive bags at the store. The difference is that your kitchen waste delivers these nutrients the way plants have been receiving them for millions of years. Let me walk you through the simple science. Your morning coffee grounds and those vegetable peels you're scraping off the cutting board are rich in nitrogen. That's the nutrient that makes leaves green and helps plants grow tall and strong. Those banana peels you're about to throw away contain phosphorus, which strengthens roots and helps flowers bloom. Eggshells bring both phosphorus and calcium to the party. Fruit waste from your counter gives you potassium, the nutrient that helps plants fight disease and produce better harvests. Now, the basic composting method I use is tailored for folks like us who don't want to work harder than necessary. You can set up a simple 3-bin system in your backyard, or honestly, just designate a corner of your yard where you pile this material. No fancy tumbling bins required, no expensive equipment to buy or assemble. I know what you're thinking. Won't it smell? Won't it attract pests? Won't I need to be out there turning and managing it all the time? The answers are no, no, and no, if you do it right. The secret to avoiding odors is balance. You need a mix of green materials and brown materials working together. Here's how the ratios work. Your green materials are the nitrogen-rich items like those coffee grounds, vegetable scraps, and fresh grass clippings. Your brown materials are carbon-rich items like dried leaves, shredded newspaper, and cardboard. You want about 3 parts brown to 1 part green. Layer them like you're making a lasagna. A layer of kitchen scraps, then a layer of dried leaves or shredded paper on top. This balance keeps the pile from getting too wet and smelly, while giving the beneficial microbes everything they need to break it all down. The timeline for creating usable compost runs several months to a year, depending on your climate and how often you add material. You'll know it's ready when it looks dark and crumbly, almost like rich potting soil. It should smell earthy, like a forest floor after rain. When you reach that point, you've got yourself garden gold. Let's talk about what this compost actually delivers compared to that $30 bag from the garden center. Commercial fertilizers give you a quick hit of nutrients that wash away after the first heavy rain. Your homemade compost provides a slow-release formula that keeps feeding your plants for months. It also improves your soil structure, helping it hold moisture and drain properly at the same time. Those bags from the store can't do that. Once you've got this free fertilizer working for you, there's an even smarter way to reduce what your plants need in the first place. What if your plants could actually fertilize each other while they grow? This isn't some new gardening trend dreamed up by seed companies. This is companion planting, nature's original fertilizer system, used for thousands of years before chemical companies even existed. Here's how this works. Certain plants, especially beans, peas, and other legumes, have a special ability that most gardeners never learn about. They pull nitrogen right out of the air and deposit it into the soil through their roots. Nitrogen is that first number on fertilizer bags, the nutrient plants need most for healthy growth. These legume plants are doing the work of a fertilizer spreader without costing you a penny. The beans and peas form a partnership with beneficial bacteria that live on their roots. These bacteria convert atmospheric nitrogen into a form your plants can actually use. When you plant legumes next to heavy feeders like tomatoes or peppers, you're creating a natural fertilizer factory right in your garden bed. The Three Sisters method shows this partnership at its finest. Indigenous peoples developed this system long before modern agriculture, and it sustained entire civilizations. Corn grows tall and provides a living pole for beans to climb. The beans fix nitrogen in the soil, feeding both the corn and the squash. The squash spreads across the ground, shading out weeds and keeping the soil moist. For those of us who want to avoid constant bending and kneeling, this system adapts beautifully to a senior-friendly backyard version. Use a smaller corn variety and bush beans instead of pole beans. This keeps everything at a comfortable height where you can reach it without strain. The squash can vine around the edges of a raised bed, making the entire system easier to manage without the physical demands of traditional row gardening. Let me share some specific pairings that work beautifully in home gardens. Tomatoes and basil make wonderful neighbors. The basil helps repel pests that bother tomatoes, and many gardeners find the tomatoes taste better when grown this way. Carrots and onions protect each other from their respective pests. The onion smell confuses carrot rust flies, while carrots help break up the soil for both plants. Lettuce and radishes work together because radishes grow fast and break up compacted soil, making it easier for lettuce roots to spread. The radishes are ready to harvest before the lettuce needs all that space. Here's the real magic of companion planting. The benefits go far beyond just fertilization. These plant partnerships reduce pest problems naturally because different plants attract different beneficial insects, while confusing harmful ones. They help conserve water by creating microclimates, where plants shade the soil and reduce evaporation. They maximize your limited garden space by using vertical growing and succession planting. For those of us working with raised beds or containers, this system adapts perfectly. In a raised bed, plant bush beans along one side with tomatoes in the center. Add basil between the tomato plants. The beans will enrich the soil throughout the growing season, while the basil keeps pests away from your tomatoes. In containers, pair snap peas with peppers in a large pot. The peas climb a simple trellis while feeding nitrogen to the peppers below. The spacing is simpler than you might think. Plant your beans or peas about 6 inches away from your tomatoes or peppers. That gives each plant enough room while keeping them close enough to share benefits. In a raised bed, alternate your plants in a checkerboard pattern rather than rows. This maximizes your space and creates more opportunities for beneficial partnerships. This isn't complicated science. It's just working with nature instead of against it. Plants have been helping each other grow for millions of years. We're simply arranging them in ways that put these natural partnerships to work in our gardens. You're already saving hundreds on fertilizer with these first two strategies, but your yard is hiding one more source of free nutrients that most people actually try to get rid of. Those weeds you've been fighting? They're actually nutrient miners working for free. Every time you pull them out and throw them away, you're tossing valuable fertilizer that cost you nothing to grow. These plants are called dynamic accumulators. They have deep root systems that reach down into layers of soil your garden vegetables can't access. They pull up minerals and nutrients from way down there and concentrate them in their leaves. When you harvest these plants and use them in your garden, you're bringing those deep nutrients up to where your vegetables can reach them. Let me share which plants you should stop fighting and start harvesting. Dandelions are packed with nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Those are the 3 main nutrients on every fertilizer bag. Their deep taproots break up compacted soil while they're growing. Then when you cut them and let them decompose, they release all those concentrated nutrients right where your plants need them. Comfrey is another powerhouse, especially rich in potassium, which helps your tomatoes and peppers produce better fruit. Nettles bring nitrogen and other trace minerals to the table. Even common clover fixes nitrogen in the soil, just like those beans we talked about earlier. The harvesting method couldn't be simpler. Cut these plants before they go to seed. This is important because you want the nutrients, not a yard full of weeds taking over your garden beds. Chop them up with pruning shears or a sharp knife. You can layer them directly as mulch around your plants or add them to your compost pile for even more concentrated fertilizer. Now let me share the comfrey tea recipe that'll rival any store-bought liquid fertilizer. Gather a good amount of comfrey leaves and fill a container about halfway. I use an old 5-gallon bucket with a lid. Add water until the container is nearly full. Let this mixture steep for several weeks. You'll want to stir it occasionally to help the leaves break down. The resulting liquid will be dark and concentrated. Strain out the leaf matter, then dilute your comfrey tea with water at a ratio of 1 part tea to 10 parts water. This liquid fertilizer is especially valuable for fruiting plants because of all that potassium comfrey provides. Here's the free fertilizer most gardeners completely overlook: your grass clippings. Every time you mow, you're creating a nitrogen-rich resource that costs nothing. After you mow, spread those clippings in thin layers around your plants as mulch. The key word is thin. A thick mat of grass clippings will block air and water from reaching your soil. Apply them about 1 inch deep or mix them with dried leaves before spreading. As they break down, they release nitrogen steadily into your soil. You do need to be careful about which plants you harvest. Stick with dandelions, comfrey, nettles, and clover, as these are safe and beneficial. Never use plants from areas that might have been treated with herbicides or pesticides. Those chemicals will end up in your garden soil and potentially in your vegetables. Always harvest before the plants set seed, so you're not creating a weed problem in your garden beds. Here's the real beauty of this approach. By working with what's already growing in your yard, you're building a self-sustaining system that gets easier every year. The comfrey you plant in one corner keeps producing leaves you can harvest. The dandelions you let grow in unused areas become a free fertilizer source. Your grass clippings transform from yard waste into garden nutrition. These three strategies work together like instruments in an orchestra. Your kitchen scraps feed your compost pile. Your companion plantings reduce the fertilizer needs of your heavy feeders. Your yard plants provide concentrated nutrients you'd otherwise buy in bottles and bags. The result is a garden that feeds itself while your grocery bill stays manageable. You're creating an independent, self-reliant garden that's protected from global price swings and market forces you can't control. Now that you understand how these strategies work together, the question you're probably asking is what this means in actual dollars and cents. Let's break down the actual dollars and cents you'll save with these three strategies. A typical season's worth of fertilizer adds up faster than most folks realize. You need a bag of all-purpose fertilizer to get your garden started in spring. Then you need specialized tomato food because those plants are heavy feeders. Your peppers want something different. The flowering plants need their own formula. Maybe you add some bone meal for phosphorus and blood meal for nitrogen. Each trip to the garden center, you're grabbing another bag or bottle because the labels tell you that's what your plants need. For a modest 10x10 vegetable garden, you're looking at spending between $150 and $200 in fertilizer per season at current prices. That's just for 100 square feet of growing space. If your garden is larger, those numbers climb proportionally. This estimate includes your starter fertilizer, your maintenance feeding throughout the season, and the specialized products for different types of plants. Now let's compare that to the three-strategy approach we've been discussing. Composting your kitchen scraps costs you exactly nothing. You're already buying the food that creates those scraps. The only difference is where they end up. Companion planting costs nothing beyond your regular seed purchases. You're planting beans and tomatoes anyway, so why not plant them together and let the beans feed nitrogen to the tomatoes? Yard-based fertilizers are completely free. The dandelions, the grass clippings, the comfrey leaves are all growing without any input from you. Here's what the annual savings look like. That $150 to $200 you would have spent on commercial fertilizers stays in your pocket. Multiply that across a decade of gardening, and you're keeping $1,500 to $2,000 that would otherwise go to chemical companies. That's real money, especially when you're managing a retirement budget and watching every dollar. The benefits stretch beyond just the money you save. Think about the physical strain of hauling those heavy fertilizer bags from your car to your garden shed. A 40-pound bag of fertilizer isn't easy to lift when you're dealing with a sore back or weak knees. With these natural methods, the heaviest thing you're carrying is a bucket of kitchen scraps or grass clippings. The lighter materials and gentler movements help you maintain your balance and coordination. You're staying active in ways that support your overall wellness and independence, rather than risking injury with heavy lifting. You make fewer trips to the garden center, which means less driving, less time spent shopping, and less exposure to the sales pitches trying to convince you to buy products you don't need. There's a deep satisfaction in knowing your garden feeds itself, that you've created a system that works with nature instead of depending on outside products. Let me address the time investment honestly. Yes, there's a small learning curve when you first start composting or arranging companion plantings. You need to learn which plants work together and how to layer your compost materials properly. But once you've established these systems, they actually save you time compared to shopping for and applying commercial products. Your compost pile keeps working whether you're paying attention to it or not. Your companion plants keep feeding each other without you doing anything. Your dandelions keep mining nutrients from deep soil layers all on their own. This matters especially in a time when everything costs more. When you're living on a fixed income and watching prices rise on groceries, utilities, and healthcare, protecting your gardening budget means protecting your overall financial wellness. Every dollar you save on fertilizer is a dollar you can spend on something else or simply keep in your savings account. Between $150 and $200 per season for a typical backyard garden adds up to $1,500 to $2,000 over the next decade of your retirement. That money stays in your pocket instead of going to chemical companies, all while you're growing healthier, more sustainable produce. You've built yourself a real buffer against the market forces that keep pushing prices higher. While fertilizer companies and global markets play their games with prices, you now have the knowledge to opt out of their system entirely. You've learned how to turn kitchen scraps into garden nutrition, how to let your plants feed each other, and how to harvest the free fertilizer already growing in your yard. Start with just one of these 3 strategies this season. Maybe begin composting your coffee grounds or plant some beans next to your tomatoes. Watch how quickly you gain confidence and savings. Drop a comment below sharing your own budget-friendly gardening secret or success story you've learned over the years, because there's nothing more powerful than gardeners supporting each other and sharing practical wisdom through these challenging times.